The Donkey Lady Bridge. The legend of the Donkey Lady Bridge comes from San Antonio's local folklore. Elm Creek, where this legend takes root, was home to a settler family in the mid-1800s, an era where families struggled to survive off the unforgiving Texas soil. The family, consisting of a man, his wife, and their 2 children, carved out a meager existence by farming and raising a few animals on a small plot of land near the creek. Life was hard, but they were managing, finding their way in the tough, raw landscape. One fateful day, the family's lives intersected with the son of a wealthy local merchant, a young man known for his brash and entitled demeanor. Riding near their property, he encountered one of the family's animals, a mule or horse, that, like the family, was essential for their survival. For reasons unknown, the young man then reportedly teased and tormented the animal, prodding it with a stick. Frustrated and defensive, the creature bit him in self-defense, causing the young man's fury. In response, he began beating the animal viciously, paying no mind to its cries. Inside the cabin, the family could hear the animal's distress sounds, and the husband and wife rushed out to protect it, hurling rocks at the assailant. The young man, though wounded by the retaliation, spat a stream of curses at them, swearing he would repay the offense that they dared to inflict upon him since he was, a man of high standing. That evening, as darkness took hold, the merchant's son returned, accompanied by a group of armed men. This time, they brought torches, illuminating their grim intentions in the dark Texas night. The men surrounded the cabin, bearing any chance of escape, and set it ablaze. Desperate, the father attempted to break free from the inferno, hoping to create an opening for his family to flee. He had barely crossed the threshold before he was shot down, with his body collapsing as flames engulfed the cabin. Inside, his wife and children were left to face the fire's wrath. Their agonized cries echoed up and down the creek, audible even from a distance. But then, out of nowhere, the legend goes that through the blazing remnants of a window, a figure emerged. The woman, burned and disfigured beyond recognition, staggered out, with her once human features twisted by fire. Her fingers were little more than charred stubs, and her face appeared warped, as if melted and stretched, giving it a haunting, elongated appearance. She let out a harrowing scream that carried through the night before she stumbled toward the creek's edge and threw herself into the water. The mob, who was overcome with fear, approached the spot cautiously, but they found no sign of her body at all. It was as though she had now vanished, leaving only the memory of that horrific scene. Following that night, strange occurrences began to plague the area. Travelers passing near Elm Creek and the newly dubbed Donkey Lady Bridge reported hearing horrifying screams and wails emanating from beneath the bridge. Some even claimed to see a ghostly figure in the distance limping through the woods. But yeah, over the years, many claim to have encountered this donkey lady herself, especially on nights when the moon was absent. Witnesses often reported the sounds of heavy footsteps approaching their vehicles or a sudden loud banging on the hood, as if someone had landed on it with unnatural strength. Some even described seeing claw-like marks left on their windows as though something was trying to reach inside. Photographs and stories started emerging of damaged cars, dented roof, scratched paint, and broken mirrors. But back to the legend itself, the legend has many variations that have circulated for decades, with some residents and folklorists alike speculating on the possibility of truth behind the tale. In some versions, the Donkey Lady is said to appear only when individuals harm animals, perhaps seeking vengeance for the suffering inflicted upon her family's mule. Others suggest she is merely a ghost story, a reminder of the injustice visited upon her and her family. But regardless, each version includes enough similarity to lend a sense of continuity to the legend, as if some kernel of truth binds them all together. Marfa Lights. The Marfa Lights, often called the Marfa Ghost Lights, are mysterious lights seen near Marfa, Texas. Observers describe them as glowing orbs that appear in the distance, typically visible from a designated viewing area established east of Marfa. The lights have sparked various explanations over the years, from atmospheric phenomena to speculations about the paranormal. Some believe the lights are linked to spirits or UFOs, while others suggest they could be linked to natural forces or unusual reflections. First recorded in 1883, the lights were initially noted by a young cowboy named Robert Reed Ellison. The tale goes that while driving cattle through the nearby Paisano Pass, he noticed a flickering glow in the distance, initially wondering if it might be a campfire from an Apache settlement. Local settlers, though, assured him that the lights were a familiar sight, though efforts to trace their source had turned up to nothing, no ashes or remnants to suggest an actual fire. Over time, additional sightings were reported, with Joe and Ann Humphreys recording their own experience just a couple of years later in 1885. These sightings continued through the years, with various accounts collected and documented, even including a photograph taken by a local rancher that appeared in 1976. In more recent times, researchers have focused on investigating the lights, especially since they've attracted curiosity-driven tourism. Scientific studies have taken various approaches, often aiming to explain the phenomenon through natural causes. For instance, a group of physics students from the University of Texas at Dallas studied the lights in 2004. They observed lights southwest of the viewing area and connected their movement and frequency with car headlights on US Route 67. By parking a car and flashing its lights, they found that the resulting glow appeared identical to what many considered a Marfa light. Their study concluded that all lights observed during their investigation matched the characteristics of car headlights moving along the highway. Other studies have proposed additional explanations though. Some scientists have suggested that the lights might result from specific atmospheric conditions. Brian Dunning, a skeptic who studied the area, pointed out that the region's elevation and frequent temperature shifts, sometimes with differences of up to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, might create mirage-like illusions that could explain the appearance of the lights. Marfa's elevation is actually around 4,688 feet, and the warm and cool layers often mix a lot, which could produce optical effects resembling floating orbs in the distance. A more complex theory, though, links the lights to geological activity. Researchers have hypothesized that methane gas pockets below the ground could ignite in certain conditions, producing flashes of light. And another possibility is piezoelectric effects, where stress on igneous rock, which is common in the area, generates electric charges that could create visible glows similar to the will-o-wisp effect observed in swampy areas. Scientists from Texas State University also conducted an extensive 20-night investigation in 2008 using spectroscopy equipment to observe the lights. Their study indicated that most sightings correspond with car headlights or small fires in the distance. However, they noted that rare instances of more erratic lights might merit further research, especially since some locals report sightings that don't align with the typical behaviors associated with car lights. Galveston Walmart Ghost. The Walmart on Seawall Boulevard in Galveston, Texas, actually holds a reputation of being haunted. Built in 1994, this Walmart sits on land once occupied by the St. Mary Orphanage run by the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word. The orphanage ended up meeting a tragic end on September 8, 1900, when one of the most devastating hurricanes in US history struck Galveston Island. Almost all of the nuns and children at St. Mary Orphanage perished, totaling at least 90 children and 10 sisters. The surviving account states that the sisters, in a desperate attempt to save the children, tied the children to themselves with clotheslines. Only 3 boys managed to survive by breaking loose and climbing a nearby tree. But yeah, back to Walmart, the legacy of the orphanage's tragic history seems to linger at the Walmart. Accounts from employees, especially those who work overnight shifts, include sightings and sounds associated with the former residents of the orphanage. Some report hearing the sounds of children laughing and crying, while others have encountered mysterious incidents like cash registers turning on by themselves and automatic doors operating with no one near them. There have also been reports of items being moved unexpectedly, especially in the toy department, where electronic toys allegedly activate on their own. Employees often mention hearing a bouncing ball echoing through the aisles, even when no ball is visible. These reports all come from employees across different positions, from stalkers to managers, making the stories a frequent topic among the workers. One especially well-known incident involved FEMA workers entering the Walmart after it sustained damage from Hurricane Ike in 2008. It said that as they navigated the darkened aisles, some reported hearing the sound of children laughing and coughing. The workers assumed children had somehow entered the building, but after a thorough search, they found no one. However, they discovered small child-sized footprints in the mud on the floor, despite no clear point of entry. And among those who have spent extensive time at the Walmart, Denise Sandoval has become known for her paranormal experiences. Working overnight shifts for more than 15 years, Sandoval has observed numerous unexplained events, from objects moving seemingly on their own to even ghostly faces appearing in the rubble during a store renovation. Her experiences have even led her to document her encounters on TikTok, where she shares videos showing her unusual occurrences. And the Walmart management itself even appears to acknowledge the unusual reputation, even posting a playful video on their Facebook page that alludes to the ghostly rumors. Also, although some managers downplay the experiences, they recognize the tales add to the store's allure and bring in some curious visitors. Domenech's Pseudo-Goat. In the 1850s, a missionary named Abbe Emmanuel Domenech encountered a creature in Fredericksburg, Texas, known as Domenech's Pseudo-Goat, or the rosed-horned clawed goat. The creature belonged to a Comanche woman who had brought it into the town. Domenech described the animal as roughly the size of a cat, with the form of a goat. It had a white silky coat, bright red horns, and claws instead of hooves. According to the account, townspeople were so interested that some offered large sums of money and even a valuable gem to acquire the creature. The woman, though, declined all offers, explaining that she knew of a woodland area where others like it could be found. The combination of features made this animal pretty difficult to classify. Cryptozoologist Carl Schucker later speculated that it could be a surviving Chalicothere, which was an ancient mammal with claws. However, Chalicotheres were generally much larger, and their gait was distinct from that of a small goat-like creature. Others have suggested it might be related to Noto ungulates, which were a type of hoofed animals that lived millions of years ago in South America and had claw-like toes, though they had no horns. But without other sightings or further descriptions, the identity of the Pseudo-Goat remains a mystery. Anson Lights. On a clear September night, as summer gave way to fall, the mayor of Anson, Tom Isbell, drove a visitor down a secluded West Texas road to witness one of the state's strangest legends, the Anson Light. They traveled along US 180 until they reached a small cemetery hidden in the shadows. Isbell pointed out a dirt road past the graveyard that led further from town, guiding them deeper into darkness. After a few minutes, they arrived at a lonely intersection surrounded by mesquite and scrub brush. Following local tradition, they turned off the headlights, cut the engine, and sat in silence, listening to the faint wind and the occasional rustling of leaves. Then they followed the ritual, flashing the headlights 3 times, a silent signal to whatever spirit might linger. Almost immediately, it said that a dim glow appeared on the horizon, faint at first but unmistakable against the darkness. The light ended up growing brighter, swaying gently as if someone were walking in the distance. Isbell nodded, recognizing the Anson Light, a strange phenomenon many had seen before. But yeah, the story of this light has been passed down for generations, a tale of ghostly mystery well known to locals and visitors alike. One version of the story tells of a young boy who went camping in the area long ago, carrying a lantern his mother had given. She promised to come if he signaled with the lantern, flashing it 3 times. Tragically, the boy never returned, and it's said that his mother's spirit now wanders with her lantern, still searching for him. The faint light seen today is believed to be a ghostly glow, appearing to those who followed the ritual. In time, searching for the Anson Light became a sort of rite of passage for students from nearby colleges like Abilene Christian University, Hardin-Simmons, and McMurray. Students would drive out to the crossroads, turn off their engines, and flash their headlights in hopes of seeing the light. Those who saw it returned with creepy stories, some claiming the glow floated closer before vanishing, leaving them to wonder if it was a ghostly encounter or simply an optical illusion. One memorable story that fueled the legend even more involved a local college student named Carl. One night, Carl drove along to the crossroads hoping to see the light. He waited in silence, watching as it grew brighter and drifted closer than he had ever seen. But the thing is, when he tried to start his car, the engine wouldn't turn over. Panic set in as the light approached, until finally the engine roared to life and he sped away. As he drove off, the light kinda shot up into the sky and disappeared. The experience left him too terrified to return, but his tale quickly became a fixture in the local lore, drawing more thrill seekers to try their luck. Years later, another visitor decided to seek out the Anson light despite warnings. After asking for directions at a local store, he was told by a cashier that the sheriff didn't like folks going out there at night and warned him of ghosts. Undeterred, he followed the directions and performed the ritual at the cemetery crossroads. Soon enough, he saw a faint glow on the horizon drifting along the desolate landscape. For him, it was proof that the stories were more than legend. But the origins of the Anson light still remain unclear. Some, like former police chief Woodrow Simmons, chalk it up to just a ghost story that took root over the years. He recalled that since the 1930s, he had seen local kids venture to his property in search of the light, with some even veering off the road in excitement. In recent years, skeptics have tried to explain the phenomenon as an optical illusion. The mayor himself, after examining local maps, proposed that the glow aligns with the stretch of US 277 where distant car headlights might be reflecting off dust or atmospheric particles. However, not everyone is really convinced by this explanation. Many who have seen the light insist that it doesn't behave like typical car headlights. Instead, it drifts, moves slowly, and doesn't show taillights. Some witnesses report that the light moves with a strange intelligence, seeming to respond to their presence. Others claim to have seen the light without performing the ritual, leading some to believe there is more to the light than mere car beams. Lake Worth Monster. The Lake Worth Monster, first reported in the summer of 1969, emerged as one of Texas's most well-known cryptid sightings. Descriptions depict a creature resembling both a goat and a human, with coarse hair and scaly patches, spotted around Lake Worth in Fort Worth, Texas. It became known for allegedly terrorizing locals, with stories of it leaping onto vehicles and even hurling a tire at a group of onlookers from a bluff. This creature quickly attracted attention from the area as sightings were frequent and sometimes involved groups who claimed they had seen it move in the shadows or even heard unearthly cries around the lake. One of the earliest and most notable incidents involved John Raychart, who reported that the creature jumped from a tree and landed on his car, leaving a scar on the vehicle. Others claimed to have witnessed the figure roaming near the lake's edge, while reports began to describe it as half man, half goat. And a photo taken by Alan Plaster in October 1969 added to the growing accounts, showing a large white figure that some believed to be the creature. Though blurry, the image fueled some curiosity, with Plaster himself suggesting it might have been a prank, adding that whatever it was, it wanted to be seen. Then, as the summer progressed, more reports came in, with additional sightings and new accounts of odd activity around the lake. Teenagers and curious residents regularly gathered near the lake in hopes of spotting the creature, and the local police even fielded several calls about disturbances near the lake and surrounding Greer Island. And despite a formal investigation, authorities found no conclusive evidence to confirm the monster's existence, leaving its reality in question. However, by the end of the summer, as school resumed, the sightings began to taper off, leading some to believe it might have actually just been a prank carried out by local high school students. Years later, an anonymous letter sent to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram in 2005 claimed that 3 high school students had orchestrated the sightings using a tinfoil mask to create a creature-like appearance. In a 2009 interview, another individual admitted involvement in the tire hurling incident, explaining that he and his friends had accidentally launched the tire while rolling it, unintentionally adding to the monster lore. Yet, the thing is, not everyone accepted these admissions as the whole story. Cryptozoologist Craig Woolheater speculated that the Lake Worth monster could have been an undiscovered primate species, noting that its bipedal nature suggested more than a mere hoax. Despite these revelations, though, the legend has still persisted. Each October since 2009, the Fort Worth Nature Center has hosted a Lake Worth Monster Bash where locals gather to discuss the stories and sightings that have kept this cryptid a part of Texas folklore. Podcasts and media stories have also revisited the legend. The White Lady of the Frio River. The White Lady of Rio Frio is a haunting story centered around love, jealousy, and a restless spirit that has interested Texas for generations. Near the small community of Rio Frio, locals report seeing a figure, which is a woman in a flowing white dress, appearing in the mist along the Frio River, moving quietly on the riverbank or sometimes closer to the road. Her presence is often subtle, as if the fog itself shapes her form, leaving people wondering if they've truly seen her or if it was just a trick of the light. And this figure is actually believed to be Maria Juarez, who was a young woman whose life ended in heartbreak in the early 1900s. Known for her beauty and kind nature, Maria was admired throughout her community. She lived with her sister's family, often helping care for her nieces and nephews while dreaming of starting her own family. Soon, she attracted the attention of Alcemo Tobar, a young vaquero who quickly fell in love with her, promising her future together. Maria returned his affection, envisioning a happy life with him. But Maria's beauty also caught the eye of another man who was her brother-in-law Gregorio. Despite being married to Maria's sister, Gregorio became increasingly infatuated with Maria, with his admiration turning into a dangerous obsession. Maria, though, made it clear that her heart belonged to Alcemo, but Gregorio's jealousy only grew. One night, Gregorio confronted Maria, professing his feelings. When she rebuffed him, his jealousy erupted into rage. Maria fled to her home, hoping Anselmo would arrive soon, but later that night, she heard footsteps outside. Expecting her lover, she opened the door, only to find Gregorio standing there. In a fit of rage, he pulled out a pistol and, without hesitation, shot her. Maria's life ended in that tragic moment with her dream shattered. Gregorio fled, hiding in a nearby barn, but the townspeople soon discovered Maria's body. They formed a search party, and by morning, they tracked him down. When they found him, Gregorio confessed to the murder, driven by jealousy. He was then tried and sentenced to prison, but the impact of his crime left a lasting scar on the community. Maria was then laid to rest in an unmarked grave in the Rio Frio cemetery, yet stories of her ghostly presence began to surface. People spoke of a figure dressed in white, often seen by children, who claimed that she would appear when they were scared or cold, offering a comforting presence. Some children told of a woman sitting quietly at the foot of their beds at night, watching over them. To the young, she was a kindly spirit, though adults often dismissed these tales as dreams or imagination. Still, many believe that Maria's spirit wanders the canyon, seeking peace she never found in life. Her story lives on as people gather by the river, hoping for a glimpse of the White Lady in the mist. For some, she remains a reminder of love's sorrow and jealousy's pain, a silent figure forever bound to the banks of the Frio River. Demon's Road. Demon's Road, officially known as Bowden Road, is an isolated and infamous stretch in Huntsville, Texas. This road actually leads to Martha's Chapel Cemetery, which is a location rumored to be among Texas's most haunted sites. The cemetery, reportedly established in a church district named Robinson Settlement, carries a history of dark events dating back to times when Native American tribes considered the land off limits, believing it to be cursed or harboring something unspeakably malevolent. According to local beliefs, something dark and violent may have happened there, tainting the land with evil. Several supernatural encounters have also been documented along this road, starting with reports of ghostly apparitions. One of the most commonly shared stories involves a young boy who supposedly rides along Demon's Road on a tricycle. Known for his unblinking, glowing gaze, the boy is often seen pedaling, with his presence sometimes shrouded in fog that appears suddenly. Accounts suggest that if one decides to approach, he might stop and stare, silently assessing them. In the lore surrounding him, if the boy finds someone unworthy or guilty of past harm, he may follow them home, visiting them during the night, and as some stories claim, possibly smothering them in their sleep. In 2001, a Houston man named Bob decided to test the tales, taking a friend along to investigate the infamous road. The two men reached the cemetery where Bob's friend fell asleep in the car. While Bob wandered the cemetery, he noticed movement beneath the ground, as though something was pushing the earth upwards. Moments later, it's said that a hand emerged, clawing its way up, grasping at Bob's pant leg and pulling him downward. He fought back, calling out for help, and his friend seemingly appeared, helping to pull him free. Together, they subdued whatever creature it was, eventually fleeing back to the car. But upon reaching the vehicle, it's said that Bob found his friend still slumped over in the passenger seat, never having left the car. The friend, as it turned out, had passed away from a heart attack sometime during the journey to Demon's Road. Another creepy tale from 2010 recounts a woman who had visited the cemetery with her husband and some friends. During their visit, they noticed a strange man walking through the cemetery but thought little of it at the time. Days later, however, the woman saw the same figure standing in the doorway of her bathroom as she was about to shower. She screamed and her husband rushed to check, but by then the man had vanished. But yeah, local legends claim that visitors to Demon's Road and Martha's Chapel Cemetery often bring something back with them, and it's said that those who experience the supernatural there might encounter spirits in their own homes. Among the creatures reportedly cited is a pale faceless entity described as moving on all fours with scaly skin and sharp teeth. Often compared to a Wendigo or skinwalker, the creature has allegedly been seen lurking in the cemetery or darting into the surrounding woods. Descriptions suggest that those who see it may experience disorientation or dread, with some accounts describing it as a malevolent spirit that stalks the area, possibly tied to darker events believed to have occurred there in ancient times. Residents living near Demon's Road avoid it at night, claiming that the land itself feels cursed. The road's reputation has also discouraged development, with few homes in the area and long stretches left uninhabited. Those who do decide to visit Martha's Chapel, though, often take precautions, such as bringing offerings or saying prayers, believing these acts may protect them from any spirits lingering there. The haunted Bolivar Lighthouse. The Bolivar Lighthouse in Port Bolivar, Texas, has had a history of unexplained events. Built in 1872 on the Bolivar Peninsula near Galveston, it replaced an 1852 lighthouse that was dismantled by Confederate soldiers during the Civil War. This act tied the site to the turmoil of the war, a connection that some believe contributes to the strange phenomena reported around the lighthouse. For over 60 years, the lighthouse guided ships safely through the treacherous Texas coastline. One of the darkest chapters in the history of this lighthouse occurred in 1900 during the Great Storm of Galveston, which is considered the deadliest natural disaster in US history. As the storm's powerful winds and flooding claimed thousands of lives, lighthouse keeper Harry Claiborne opened the doors to the lighthouse, sheltering around 125 people within its sturdy walls. Claiborne and his family provided food and care for the survivors, while the lighthouse itself stood firm against the hurricane's brutal force. In the years following the disaster, eerie stories began to circulate though. Many believe that the spirits of those lost in the storm linger at the lighthouse, tied to the place where they sought refuge. Visitors report seeing strange shadows around the lighthouse, especially on stormy nights, and unusual fog that forms around the structure without warning. These sightings led some to think that the lighthouse holds the memories of those tragic days, as if it absorbed the anguish and fear of those who suffered there. And an unverified darker story also surrounds the lighthouse. According to legend, a young man once killed his parents on the property before taking his own life. Though no records confirm this event, it's still become part of the site's lore, with some claiming his restless spirit still wanders the grounds. Paranormal enthusiasts also often point to the lighthouse's Civil War history and its role in the Great Storm as two reasons for the reported supernatural activity. They suggest that sites marked by deep suffering can retain a kind of residual energy, which may explain the sensations and sightings reported by visitors. But despite the scarcity of documented encounters, those who visit the lighthouse speak of strange sensations, chills, and fleeting glimpses of figures that vanish as soon as they appear. While skeptics attribute these experiences to tricks of the mind, others remain convinced that the lighthouse truly holds onto the spirits of those lost to both war and nature. Horizon City Monster. The Horizon City Monster is a cryptid reported to inhabit Horizon City, a small community in El Paso County, Texas. This creature, often described as resembling like a Bigfoot or a similar large hairy humanoid, reportedly made its first appearance in the 1970s. While stories of its sightings have been circulating for decades, the legend gained renewed attention in 2003 after a local woman, Cecilia Montañez, shared her encounters. Her detailed description reignited local interest and spread awareness of the elusive creature said to roam the desert areas around Horizon City. She first encountered the Horizon City Monster when she was driving on a remote desert road outside of El Paso. She spotted a large hairy figure crouching over a dead coyote by the side of the road. Curious but cautious, she approached the figure only to watch it rise to full height and stride up a nearby sand dune. Although the creature appeared to stand taller than the mound itself, she noticed that with each step it seemed to sink lower until it completely vanished behind the sand. She initially suspected the creature might have disappeared into an underground lair or hidden cave entrance. When she returned the next day to investigate further, the coyote carcass and any sign of the creature had vanished, likely because of the strong winds sweeping through the area. Following the strange encounters, Montañez recalled a 1975 El Paso Times article reporting a similar sighting by a group of 3 local teenagers. They described a gorilla-like creature near the Horizon City golf course. Then, Deputy Bill Rutherford, tasked with investigating the sighting, discovered a single footprint at the scene. However, he dismissed the account, speculating that it was a prank or hoax, despite the footprint's peculiar appearance. As Horizon City's first police chief years later, he remained skeptical, concluding the initial sighting lacked credible evidence. In contrast, Montañez firmly believes that the creature exists and theorizes that it may live in a network of caves hidden beneath the city. She also added that these creatures possessed glowing red eyes similar to a cat's in low light, and that their diet, while primarily herbivorous, might include small animals due to the scarcity of vegetation in the desert. Beyond sightings of the creature itself and its physical appearance, other locals have reported strange auditory experiences, including humming sounds heard while driving along East Lake Boulevard, another area of Horizon City. This humming has been associated with sightings of the monster, leading some to speculate that the sounds could be related to its presence or communication method. And Montañez herself has expressed a desire to promote Horizon City as a tourist destination for cryptid enthusiasts, similar to how Roswell, New Mexico attracts those interested in UFO sightings and extraterrestrial lore. But in general, despite her enthusiasm, many remain skeptical, including her own daughter, who initially doubted her mother's claims until reportedly witnessing the creature herself. While some attribute the sightings to natural explanations, Cecilia and other witnesses insist their experiences defy rational understanding. The Haunting of Hotel Galvez. The Hotel Galvez in Galveston, Texas, was built between 1900 and 1911 and was named after Spanish Revolutionary War hero Viscount Bernardo de Galvez, though he never actually visited Galveston. Since its completion, the hotel has been a silent witness to Galveston's turbulent history. From devastating hurricanes to famous guests, The hotel has weathered significant milestones, each leaving an impression within its halls. And one of the most notable events out of what we just mentioned was the massive hurricane that hit Galveston in 1915, which killed hundreds of people. Despite the destruction around it, Hotel Galvez remained standing, sheltering its guests. According to local lore, some wealthy patrons, safe within the sturdy walls, supposedly held a hurricane party, shutting themselves inside until the storm passed. As the years went on, the hotel transformed, adapting to the demands of each era. During the Prohibition era, a hidden speakeasy operated in its bar area, and in World War II, the hotel closed its doors to regular tourists, instead hosting the United States Coast Guard. Beyond its storied history though, the Hotel Galvez has a long legacy of paranormal encounters. Staff and guests alike report strange happenings throughout the hotel. Room 501 is at the center of one of the most tragic and widely told ghost stories, the tale of the Ghost Bride. According to the story, a young woman deeply in love with a sailor used to wait in room 501, climbing to the roof's hatch to watch the sea, hoping to catch sight of his return. One day, she received word that a storm had overtaken her lover's ship and that there were no survivors. Heartbroken, she hanged herself in the west turret. Her sorrow, however, became all the more poignant when her sailor returned home, alive, only to discover that she had taken her life, believing him lost forever. Ever since, staff and guests claim her spirit still lingers, with her presence often felt in the areas where she once waited. Many have reported seeing orbs of light or unexplained flashes in room 501, and some believe that these sightings are her way of mourning the love that she lost. The paranormal activity isn't just limited to room 501 though. Throughout the hotel, there are also reports of a little girl seen playing with a ball on the lower floors. Employees and long-term residents have also mentioned encountering a male presence in the laundry area, often felt but rarely seen. Then there are tales of unexpected happenings in other parts of the hotel. Candles are said to extinguish on their own, even without a draft, and dishes break without any apparent cause. Guests themselves have described hearing breathing sounds near the music hall, accompanied by some quiet laughter, as if an invisible crowd lingers long after any actual patrons have left. Near another bathroom, visitors have reported hearing children's laughter, though no children are in sight. In particular though, people who have stayed for extended periods sometimes claim to encounter a female figure dressed in a maid's uniform, with her form fleeting as she moves through the hallways. Another recurring apparition is that of a man who seems to walk straight into closed doors before disappearing altogether. The Lady of the Lake. White Rock Lake in Dallas, Texas is home to one of the state's most enduring ghost stories, which is the legend of the Lady of the Lake. This legend tells of a mysterious woman who appears at night along the roads bordering the lake, especially Garland Road and Lawther Drive. Witnesses describe her as a figure in a drenched evening dress who attempts to flag down passing cars for assistance. Those who stop report that she asks for a ride home, explaining that she's had an accident, and then climbs into the backseat. However, once they reach the address she provides, the woman vanishes, leaving only a damp spot where she sat. The origins of the Lady of the Lake legend are kinda uncertain, but several real-life drownings and accidents around White Rock Lake may have contributed to its development. One tragic drowning involved Haley Enid Gaston in 1927. Other incidents include the deaths of Louise Ford Davis, who drowned in 1935, and Rose Stone, who met the same fate in 1942. Some believe that these historical events fueled the ghostly tale that persists today, though none of these individuals can be definitively connected to the Lady of the Lake. The lake itself also has a history that stretches back to the early 20th century. Initially created as a reservoir in 1911 to address water shortages in Dallas, the lake later became a popular recreational area, though swimming has been prohibited since 1953. The lake's surrounding land was also owned by local families, including the Daniel and Cox families, whose homesteads date back to the 1830s. A small cemetery associated with the Cox family containing around 500 graves remains near the lake, adding another historical layer to the area. During World War II, White Rock Lake was used as an army recruitment site with German prisoners of war housed nearby. So yeah, the lake's long history and connection to both natural and human events create a setting that seems adequate for stories of the supernatural. Those sightings of the Lady of the Lake have been recorded since at least the 1930s. The story gained more attention when Anne Clark documented it for the Texas Folklore Society in 1943. Clark's account really helped popularize the legend, which many residents and visitors continue to pass down today. According to the most common version, the ghost appears at night, seemingly distressed, and asks for help, but always vanishes without a trace thereafter. Variations in the story suggest multiple spirits may haunt the area rather than a single ghost. Some believe this could be due to the lake's role in tragic drownings, accidents, and possibly people taking their own life over the years. Yorktown Hospital. Yorktown Memorial Hospital in Yorktown, Texas is well known for its creepy reputation and dark past. Located in a quiet town between San Antonio and the Gulf of Mexico, the hospital began its operations in 1951 under the administration of the Felician Sisters, which was a Catholic organization. Built initially to aid people struggling with alcohol and drug addiction, the hospital expanded to include operating rooms, a labor and delivery unit, and other medical services across its 30,000 square feet of space, which included 2 wings and a basement. Despite its religious affiliations, Yorktown Memorial eventually gained a reputation for substandard care and had an unusually high turnover rate among its staff. Reports suggest that over 500 patients died within a 6-year period, contributing to a total death toll of about 2,000 people throughout its years of operation. The hospital eventually closed in 1986, following the operating of another facility in nearby Cuero. But even though Yorktown Memorial has been inactive for decades, it remains a hotspot for paranormal activity, attracting ghost hunters and enthusiasts from all over. Witnesses and investigators have reported shadowy figures, disturbing sounds like disembodied moans, and the sight of black apparitions with glowing red eyes. Some claim to have even encountered talking dolls and heard persistent tapping on the glass doors of the hospital's lobby. It's said also that ghost sightings are common, with apparitions resembling former patients or visitors appearing throughout the building. These reports are frequently supported by electronic voice phenomena, or otherwise known as EVP recordings, which have been captured by numerous paranormal investigation teams. And one of the most well-known figures associated with the whole hospital's history is Dr. Leon Nowicki, a physician who worked at Yorktown Memorial until his retirement in his 90s. Known for his questionable practices, Dr. Leon's name remains attached to the hospital because of stories of his high patient mortality rate. One account even alleges that he accidentally slit a patient's throat while attempting a procedure on the thyroid. Though his spirit has not been directly reported by visitors, his dark legacy contributes to the hospital's haunted reputation. And among the most commonly seen apparitions is a young girl named Stacy, believed to have been a patient at the hospital. Stacy is said to be particularly active in the hospital library, where she responds to those who sit and read to her, sometimes even rolling a ball when asked. A copy of the Pokey Little Puppy was found on site with a note addressed to her from Dr. Nowicki, deepening the mystery surrounding her presence. The specifics of Stacy's death are unknown though, but her frequent appearances have made her a well-known figure in Yorktown Memorial's haunted lore. The Felician Sisters, who once operated the hospital, are also said to linger, with reports of a nun in full habit appearing in various parts of the building. It's often reported that people with tattoos are particularly vulnerable to negative encounters, as visitors claim to have been choked or scratched by an unseen presence, perhaps as a sign of the nuns' disapproval of body art. Another ghostly figure, known only as TJ, is believed to be the spirit of a man who died tragically outside the hospital's back entrance. It's said that TJ was an addict seeking help, but was unable to reach anyone inside because the back door buzzer was broken. By the time staff found him the following day, he had already passed away. His ghost is reportedly seen lingering near the back door, which is a silent reminder of his unmet need for help. But perhaps one of the darker stories associated with Yorktown Memorial is a rumored double murder in the hospital's boiler room. While no specific details or identities are documented, there's accounts of two individuals who allegedly died in a violent altercation there, with bloodstains still visible on the walls. One of the hospital's property owners had this residue tested, and the results confirmed it as human blood. Today, Yorktown Memorial Hospital stands as a privately owned property and offers tours for those brave enough to explore its dark corridors. The legend of Chipita Rodriguez. The story of Josefa Chipita Rodriguez, believed for years to be the only woman executed by hanging in Texas, is a part of South Texas folklore that blends both history and legend. Born on December 30th, 1799, Rodriguez was a native of Mexico who eventually settled with her father on the edge of Nueces County. She operated a small inn along Cotton Road near the Aransas River where travelers could rest and eat. Sources indicate that her son, Juan Silvera, may have helped run the inn, though some suggest he was an illegitimate son, a rumor tied to her trial. In August 1863, a horse trader named John Savage visited her inn, carrying $600 in gold, which was a significant amount at the time. Shortly after his departure, Savage's body was discovered downriver in a burlap sack, brutally murdered. Authorities claim to have found a bloodied axe on Chipita's porch, which she insisted was used for chopping wood, while the blood was from slaughtered chickens. However, her explanations went unheeded, and suspicion quickly fell on her. Rodriguez, reportedly in her 60s, though some legends claim she was in her 90s, was soon arrested. Her trial was swift, with a jury of people pulled from the streets. She didn't speak in her defense beyond claiming innocence, and some accounts suggest she may have been trying to protect someone else, possibly her son. Judge Benjamin F. Neal, the first mayor of Corpus Christi, presided over the case, sentencing her to be hanged despite the jury's plea for leniency. Her last words were "no soy culpable," meaning "I'm not guilty." The execution then took place on November 13, 1863, and she was reportedly hanged in a wedding dress donated by a local woman. Her burial was outside consecrated ground under a mesquite tree by the Nueces River, a location said to have left her spirit unsettled. Locals tell of strange occurrences being moans from her grave, sightings of a spectral figure with a noose, and wailing sounds along the riverbanks. Some even believe that her spirit roams as a response to the injustice of her death, appearing when Texas women face unjust trials or execution. In 1985, State Senator Carla Strawn sought to address the lingering injustice of her conviction. A resolution was then passed by the Texas legislature and signed by Governor Mark White, symbolically absolving Chipita of the crime. However, even then, legends still claim that her spirit remains restless. The Lost Silver Mine of San Saba. The story of Bowie Silver, which is a legend surrounding a hidden silver mine near the San Saba River, traces all the way back to the mid-18th century, when Spanish officials in Texas heard of some legendary silver deposits in the area. Then, in 1756, Texas Governor Jacinto de Barrios y Jarigui dispatched Bernardo de Miranda y Flores to explore the region after hearing that indigenous groups had located a white metal near the San Saba River. Miranda's expedition ended up bringing back a small sample of ore, which was later tested in Mexico City. However, the thing is, the royal assayers determined that it was too minor to be conclusive and estimated it would only yield 5 ounces of silver per 100 pounds of ore, which was not really optimal. This outcome, which was pretty disappointing, didn't really quash the hopes though. Plans were soon made to establish Presidio San Luis de las Amarelas and Mission Santa Cruz de San Saba in the region to serve as bases for future mining activities, as well as to convert the local Apache population. However, in 1758, the mission was destroyed in a large-scale attack by Comanches, who demonstrated that the area was too dangerous for sustained Spanish mining efforts. The idea of valuable silver mines near San Saba continued to circulate though. In 1829, Stephen F. Austin included the location of the supposed Spanish silver mine on his map of Texas to attract settlers. His cousin, Mary Austin Hawley, also referenced the abandoned mine in her 1836 book, noting that it had once been active before the workmen were reportedly attacked by native groups. The legend then eventually caught the interest of Rezin Bowie and his brother James, who were eager to locate the abandoned silver. With permission from the political chief, they organized an expedition departing San Antonio de Bexar on November 2, 1831. The party consisted of 2 Bowie brothers along with the whole group. After nearly 2 weeks of travel, they ended up encountering a friendly group of Comanches who warned them that over 100 Tahucano warriors were tracking them with intentions of an attack. Despite the warning, the Bowie party still pressed on toward the San Saba mission ruins, but they were unable to locate the site before camping for the night on November 20th. They then awoke the following morning to find themselves surrounded by the Tahuacano warriors who had followed them. The ensuing battle became a pivotal moment in the Bowie brothers' lives. Quickly retreating to a grove of live oaks, the group took a defensive position, exchanging gunfire with the forces. The attackers withdrew to higher ground and maintained a steady assault, with some even taking cover in a nearby creek bed. By midday, the Tahuacanos attempted a new tactic, being setting fire to the surrounding prairie in hopes that the smoke would force the Bowie party from their cover. Meanwhile, Gonzalez and Charles from the party constructed breastworks using saddles, packs, and available branches to fortify their position. But yet, despite the relentless attack, the Bowie party managed to withstand the siege. Their strategy involved immediately moving after each shot, a method they claimed helped keep their locations hidden. By nightfall, the Tahuacanos withdrew, leaving the Bowie group to tend to their casualties. They claimed to have counted 21 Tahuacano dead and found additional bloody spots across the battlefield. Within their own ranks, one was killed who was named McCaslin, and 3 others, Buchanan, Doyle, and Coriol, sustained injuries. The party also lost several horses, with 5 ended up being killed and others injured beyond use. They still maintained a defensive camp for more than a week, keeping a signal fire burning and hoping for assistance from friendly Comanches. Finally, on November 29th, they began their return journey to San Antonio de Bexar, where they arrived on December 6, 1831. Although James Bowie reportedly intended to make another attempt at locating the San Saba silver mine, there's not really a record of him ever returning to the area before his death at the Alamo in 1836. The legend of Bowie silver then persisted into the 20th century. In 1995, Frank Busbacher, a historical researcher, proposed that Bowie may have found the mine and taken the silver to Alamo, hiding it in a well near the southeast corner of the Long Barrack. The excavation was then conducted under supervision, but no treasure was uncovered, leaving the whole story as mysterious as ever. Beaumont Blackout. In the early hours of May 3, 1985, Beaumont, Texas plunged into an unexpected darkness that caught the attention of everyone in the greater Southeast Texas region. It wasn't just your ordinary blackout, but one that left about 132,000 people without power, sweeping over homes, businesses, and essential services. By 9:30 p.m., the city's lights had completely vanished. Hospitals, police stations, and fire departments, which usually stayed illuminated and connected, were all left powerless. The scale and impact was really notable, and even more odd was the complete lack of explanation. Despite intensive investigations by local authorities, power companies, and even federal agencies, the event defied any clear reasoning. Some experts considered that maybe a malfunction or a critical failure within the electrical grid might be to blame, but others pointed out that such an outage would typically affect a smaller area rather than the widespread power failure that blanketed Beaumont. Those who searched for signs of equipment failure found nothing, and the city's grid seemed as intact as ever. Then, as days passed, other theories began to surface. Some claimed that the blackout could have been a calculated act of sabotage, though no evidence of tampering or intrusion was ever discovered. Investigators from various law enforcement agencies even pored over records and conducted interviews, hoping to uncover traces of intentional interference, yet they found no clues at all. But yeah, despite all the extensive efforts, the case still remained cold, with nothing to substantiate a theory of terrorism or sabotage. The ghost of Fort Phantom Hill, Texas. Fort Phantom Hill's story began in 1849 when Captain Rudolph B. Marcy was assigned to map a safe route through Comancheria, which is a vast region controlled by the Comanche. Marcy's mission was to establish a secure passage for those heading to California, leading to the creation of a chain of forts including Fort Phantom Hill. Yet, over time, the fort became known less for a strategic purpose and more for the strange phenomena reported by those stationed there. For example, in 1851, Lieutenant Colonel John J. Abercrombie arrived at Fort Phantom Hill with his troops, only to be greeted by a brutal snowstorm that claimed the life of a teamster and many animals. The location itself was also unforgiving, with limited access to water and timber, and the fort's misplacement because of a communication error only made life harder. Construction materials had to be brought from miles away, and the isolated fort soon became infamous for its harsh conditions. The fort's haunting reputation also grew as soldiers began to speak of strange sightings. Some claimed the fort's silhouette would disappear as travelers approached, giving it the phantom name. Others told of a shadowy figure seen at night by a nervous sentry who, upon firing his weapon, found no one there. Ghost stories also ended up being circulated among the soldiers. Life was pretty harsh at Fort Phantom Hill, with water sources like Elm Creek often ran dry, and the soldiers could barely survive on the brackish water from the clear fork of the Brazos. Even an 80-foot well didn't really solve the water shortage, and men were forced to haul water from miles upriver. Without fresh water, growing vegetables was nearly impossible, leading to malnutrition and disease. Many soldiers ended up deserting, unable to endure the bleak and isolated life at the fort. But despite its vulnerable position, the fort saw little conflict. Soldiers maintained relatively peaceful interactions with tribes like the Comanche, Lipan, and Kiowa. By 1854, the military purpose of Fort Phantom Hill had diminished, and it was officially abandoned. As they left, the soldiers reportedly set the fort's wooden structures on fire, some say out of resentment for the fort's hardships. Even after its abandonment though, stories of restless spirits began to circulate. Legends told of Native American spirits wandering the grounds at night, bound to the land they had protected for centuries. Another tale spoke of a man unjustly hanged near the fort whose restless ghost supposedly cursed his accusers, each meeting a mysterious fate. Perhaps the most famous ghost tied to Fort Phantom Hill though is the Lady of the Lake, a spectral figure haunting nearby Lake Fort Phantom Hill. Dating back nearly 150 years, long before the lake even existed, sightings describe a woman in a light-colored gown hovering over the water, sometimes even holding a lantern that cast a bluish glow. Her story kind of varies with each version, but still remains equally tragic. In one tale, she was a pioneer's wife who shot her husband by mistake, mistaking him for an enemy after he couldn't give their secret code word. In another, she was bride-to-be in the 1950s waiting for her groom, whose body was later found floating in the lake with no clear cause of death, leaving her spirit to wander in grief. Another story suggests she was drowned by her lover, her spirit haunting the lake as a tragic reminder. Some say the Lady of the Lake may even be La Llorona, who is a ghost from Hispanic folklore, often seen near bodies of water. Ghost cows of Farm Road 511. The ghost cows of Farm Road 511, also called the ghost cows of Texas, are spectral animals said to appear along a desolate stretch of road near the Texas-Mexico border. Farm Road 511, which is located in a remote part of Texas, has actually had a long history of eerie reputation, with reports of ghostly cattle sightings that cause accidents and disturbances for travelers in general. But yeah, unlike typical ghost stories involving human apparitions, this local phenomenon involves the sudden appearance of what seems to be cows in the middle of the road, only to vanish as cars approach. These sightings have been reported at night, usually by drivers who claim to have swerved or braked abruptly to avoid a cow standing or walking in the road. Many have stated that they stopped to investigate the area after seeing these figures, only to find no sign of any cattle or living creature nearby. Farm Road 511 is also not really heavily populated, and sightings of the ghost cows typically occur late at night when the road is quiet and visibility is limited. Witnesses claim that as they drive along this stretch, a cow suddenly appears a few feet in front of their vehicle. The instinct to avoid the animal often leads to accidents as drivers veer off the road, causing damage to their vehicles and risking injury. Reports do say though that upon exiting their cars, these drivers find no evidence of any animals at all. There's no tracks, no sounds, and no other signs that a cow was even there. In general though, this pattern has led some people to think that the ghost cows might be some remnants of past accidents or a different phenomenon entirely. The origins of the ghost cow legend are unclear, but local media newspapers have occasionally covered these sightings, and the story has been passed down among residents familiar with the strange occurrences along Farm Road 511. Some speculate that these cows may be tied to past incidents involving livestock on the road, possibly accidents or cases where cattle were abandoned or lost in the area. However, no specific incidents have been linked definitively to these apparitions. So that's the end of the video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Leave some feedback in the comments if you have any, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.